At 68, I thought I knew everything about human nature, especially when it came to family. But one slap across my face at the dinner table taught me that the most dangerous predator can be the one you've welcomed with open arms. What she wanted wasn't just money, it was something far more sinister, and the price of her greed would be everything she'd schemed for. My name is Margaret Lewis, and I built my financial consulting firm from nothing but determination and 18-hour workdays. Now, at 68, I should have been enjoying the fruits of my labor in peace. Instead, I found myself staring across my mahogany dining table at the woman who would soon reveal herself as my greatest mistake. The dinner had started pleasantly enough. Daniel, my 35-year-old son, helped Sophie, my 11-year-old granddaughter, with her napkin while Lauren, his wife of 5 years, arranged the serving dishes with practiced precision. The autumn light filtering through my dining room windows cast long shadows across the table, and I remember thinking how picture-perfect we must have looked. 3 generations gathered for our weekly family dinner. "The roast is wonderful, Margaret," Lauren said, her voice carrying that particular sweetness she reserved for these occasions. At 32, she was still strikingly beautiful, with honey blonde hair pulled back in an elegant chignon and green eyes that never quite seemed to warm, no matter how wide her smile stretched. "Thank you, dear," I replied, watching as she cut her meat into precise, small pieces. Everything Lauren did was calculated, measured. I'd noticed it from the beginning, but had dismissed it as nervousness around her new mother-in-law. The conversation flowed normally at first. Sophie's upcoming school play, Daniel's latest project at the architectural firm, the neighbor's new landscaping. Then Lauren set down her fork with deliberate care. "Margaret," she began, and something in her tone made my spine straighten. "I've been thinking about privilege lately, about how some people hoard wealth while others struggle to survive." Daniel's hand paused halfway to his water glass. Sophie looked up from her plate, sensing the shift in atmosphere that children are so unnaturally attuned to. "That's an interesting topic for dinner conversation," I said carefully. Lauren's lips curved into what might have been a smile on someone else's face. On hers, it looked like a predator baring its teeth. "Is it? I think it's perfectly relevant when we're sitting in a room that cost more than most people make in 5 years, eating food that could feed a family of 6. "Lauren," Daniel warned quietly. She turned to him with mock surprise. "What? I'm just making conversation about social justice. Surely your mother, with all her business acumen, understands the importance of wealth redistribution?" The words wealth redistribution hung in the air like a challenge. I set down my own fork, meeting her gaze steadily. "I understand the importance of earning what you have. Every dollar in my bank account represents hours of work, risks taken, sacrifices made. I started with nothing." "Please," Lauren interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. "Another bootstrap story? How original. Tell me, Margaret, how does it feel knowing you'll die alone in this big house, clutching your precious money while the world burns around you? Just another selfish capitalist who stepped on others to get ahead." The slap came before anyone could react. Not from her to me, no. Lauren was too clever for physical violence. The slap was in her words, in the venom behind them, in the way Sophie's face crumpled and Daniel seemed to shrink into his chair. "Mom," Daniel finally spoke, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. They darted between his plate and his wife, like a man caught between 2 firing squads. "Maybe we should..." "Should what?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage building in my chest. "Should pretend your wife didn't just call me a selfish capitalist who deserves to die alone? Should ignore the fact that she's sitting at my table, eating my food while spewing this poison?" Lauren leaned back in her chair, satisfaction glowing in those cold green eyes. "See? There it is. The true Margaret Lewis, not the generous grandmother, not the loving mother, just a bitter old woman who thinks her money makes her better than everyone else." Sophie pushed back her chair with a screech. "I need to use the bathroom," she whispered, fleeing before anyone could stop her. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel stared at his plate like it held the secrets of the universe. Lauren picked up her fork again, resuming her meal as if she hadn't just detonated a bomb in the middle of my family. "I think," I said slowly, "that dinner is over." Lauren shrugged, delicate and dismissive. "If you say so. Come on, Daniel. Let's collect Sophie and go." My son, my brilliant, successful son who had once stood up to bullies twice his size, followed his wife without a word. He paused at the doorway, finally meeting my eyes, and what I saw there chilled me more than Lauren's words. It wasn't surprise or shock. It was resignation, tinged with something that looked terribly like guilt. They left me sitting alone at my dining table, surrounded by the remnants of what should have been a lovely family dinner. The roast had gone cold, the candles flickered in the growing darkness, and I realized with crystalline clarity that this wasn't the first time Lauren had shown her true colors. It was simply the first time she'd done it in front of me. The slap hadn't been her words alone. It had been Daniel's silence, Sophie's frightened exit, and the crushing realization that something was terribly wrong in my family. And I was going to find out what. The grandfather clock in my study chimed 11:30 p.m. as I sat surrounded by bank statements and credit card records. After they'd left, I'd cleared the table mechanically, loaded the dishwasher, and then found myself drawn to my home office like a moth to flame. Something about Lauren's calculated cruelty had triggered an instinct honed by decades in business. When someone shows you their cards that boldly, they're usually hiding a bigger hand. I poured myself a glass of wine and began my excavation into the past 5 years. Each document told a story I'd been too blind to read before. Lauren had entered our lives like a spring breeze, all warmth and promise when Daniel first brought her home. She'd been working at a nonprofit, how noble, I'd thought, and spoke passionately about social justice and helping the underprivileged. The memory of our first meeting flickered through my mind. She'd admired my home with what I'd taken for appreciation, but now recognized as appraisal. Every compliment had been a calculation. Every sweet gesture a deposit in an account she planned to cash in later. My fingers traced through the records. August, 5 years ago, $1,000 to help with her student loans. "Just until I get on my feet," she'd said, eyes brimming with grateful tears. October that same year, $2,500 for car repairs. "I don't know what I'd do without you. Margaret, Daniel is so lucky to have a mother like you." The pattern emerged slowly, like a photograph developing in solution. Never large enough amounts to raise alarms, always couched in reasonable explanations. Medical bills for her supposedly sick mother, $5,000. Emergency dental work, $3,000. A certification course that would really advance her career won $8,000, each request perfectly timed, usually after a family gathering where she'd been particularly charming, particularly attentive to my stories, particularly interested in my advice. I reached for my calculator. Though my mind had already done the math, over 5 years, the total reached $47,000, not including the designer handbags I'd noticed, but she'd claimed were incredible thrift store finds, or the jewelry that was costume, but doesn't it look real? Or the weekend trips that were always sponsored by work or won in a raffle. The wine turned bitter in my mouth as I remembered how she'd isolated Daniel from his friends. Marcus, his college roommate, had stopped calling after Lauren claimed he'd made a pass at her. Jennifer, his colleague who'd been like a sister, suddenly became toxic and jealous of our happiness. One by one, she'd pruned away anyone who might have noticed the patterns, anyone who might have warned him. And Sophie, sweet, bright Sophie, who used to run to me with drawings and stories, had grown quieter over the past year, more careful with her words, more anxious about her mother's moods. The realization hit me like ice water. I'd been so focused on being the good grandmother, not interfering, respecting boundaries, that I'd missed the signs of a child walking on eggshells in her own home. I pulled up my laptop and began searching through family photos from the past 5 years. There was Lauren at Christmas, wearing a new watch I'd never seen before. Lauren at Sophie's birthday, her hair freshly styled in what I now recognized as an expensive salon treatment. Lauren at Easter, carrying a purse that retail for $3,000. I knew because I had the same one, but it was the photos I wasn't in that told the real story. Posted on social media just days after her tearful requests for help, Lauren at exclusive restaurants, champagne flute in hand, Lauren at spa retreats that cost more than most people's monthly rent, Lauren boarding planes to destinations she'd never mentioned visiting, all posted to an Instagram account she must have thought I'd never find, under a name just different enough, Lauren. D. Style, instead of Lauren Davis. The captions were what turned my stomach. Investing in yourself is never selfish. Under a photo from a 5-star resort. Surround yourself with people who understand your worth. At a restaurant where dinner costs $300 a person. And my personal favorite, playing the long game always pays off. Patience is profitable. 3:12 a.m. now. My eyes burned from strain and unshed tears, not of sadness, but of fury. This woman hadn't just stolen money. She'd stolen my son's confidence, my granddaughter's childhood joy, and my own trust in my judgment. She'd played me perfectly, using my love for my family and my guilt over working long hours during Daniel's childhood as weapons against me. I closed the laptop and walked to my window, looking out at the city lights below, somewhere out there. Lauren was probably sleeping peacefully, confident in her control over my family. She thought she'd won tonight, that her verbal assault had been another victory in whatever sick game she was playing. But Lauren had made a critical error. She'd shown her contempt too early, gotten too comfortable in her position. In all my years of business, I'd learned that the most dangerous opponent is the one you've underestimated. And Lauren had just revealed that she saw me as nothing more than a bitter old woman with a bank account. I smiled grimly at my reflection in the window. She wanted to play games? Fine. But she'd chosen the wrong opponent. I hadn't built my company by being nice or naive. I'd survived corporate takeovers, backstabbing partners, and economic downturns that crushed stronger firms than mine. Lauren thought she was the predator in this scenario. She was about to learn what it meant to hunt someone who'd been surviving in the jungle far longer than she'd been alive. Sleep had eluded me entirely. By 6:15 a.m., I was at my computer again, this time diving deeper into the digital footprints Lauren had tried to hide. The Instagram account had been just the beginning. With the skills I'd picked up from years of due diligence investigations, I began unraveling the web she'd woven. The Facebook account came next, under the name Lauren Pierce, not Davis. My blood chilled. Had she even legally married my son? The profile was locked down tight, but profile pictures are always public. There she was, 5 years younger, on the arm of an elderly man at what looked like a charity gala. The caption read, "With my dear Harold at the St. Augustine Foundation dinner." Harold. I'd heard that name before, in a news story about a widower who'd lost his fortune to a caregiver he'd grown too fond of. I switched tactics, searching for Lauren Pierce and Harold together. The results made my hands tremble. A small article from the Miami Herald, dated 6 years ago. Local philanthropist claims caregiver manipulated him out of $200,000. The details were sparse. Harold Brennan, 78, had hired a home care aide named Lauren Pierce. Over 18 months, she'd convinced him to add her to bank accounts, co-sign loans, and transfer property. The case had been dropped when Harold suffered a stroke and couldn't testify. But Lauren Pierce had a sister mentioned in the article, Monica Pierce, who'd worked at the same home care agency. My mind raced back to Lauren's Instagram. I'd seen comments from someone named Monica P., supportive messages under the lavish photos. "Get it, girl. You deserve everything." Playing chess while they play checkers. I created a fake profile. Elizabeth Hartford, retired teacher, lover of cats and gardening. Within minutes, I'd sent friend requests to both Lauren, D, Style, and Monica P. While waiting, I searched for more victims. The pattern was nearly invisible unless you knew where to look. A mention here, a court filing there, always with slightly different names. Lauren P. Davis, L. Pierce Davis. Laura Pierce. The friend request to Monica P. was accepted first. Her page was a goldmine of carelessness. Photos of the sisters together, toasting champagne at upscale bars. But it was the private messages she'd screenshotted and posted that made my stomach turn. Day 847 with the architect's family. One read, "The mill is loaded but sharp, playing the long game." Another, "Sophie's the key. Kids are always the way in. Get the kid, get the trust, get the money." My heart hammered as I read another exchange. Monica, "How much longer?" Lauren, "She's starting to crack. Give it 6 months max." Monica P., "What about the backup plan?" Lauren, "Already laying groundwork. Dr. Friend will testify to early dementia if needed. Then Danny Boy becomes conservator, and I become Danny Boy's guide." Dr. Friend, dementia, conservator. The words swam before my eyes as the full scope of their plan crystallized. They weren't just after my money. They were planning to have me declared incompetent. And with Daniel under Lauren's thumb, she'd control everything through him. The final piece fell into place when I found a cached page from a now-deleted blog, The Golden Years Harvest, a guide to elder care opportunities by L. Pierce. It was exactly what it sounded like, a how-to manual for targeting wealthy elderly people through their families. Chapter titles included Identifying Prime Targets, Building Trust Through Grandchildren, and Legal Loopholes in Conservatorship Laws. My phone buzzed. Lauren had accepted my fake profile's friend request. Her page was more careful than her sister's, but there were enough breadcrumbs. Photos from conferences about elder care advocacy, connections to lawyers who specialized in conservatorships, and most damning, a photo from 2 weeks ago at a coffee shop with a woman in medical scrubs. The caption, "Catching up with Doctor. Sarah, so grateful for friends who understand family challenges." I zoomed in on the photo. Behind them, barely visible, was a whiteboard with partial text visible. Symptoms to document, memory loss, confusion, agitation, paranoia. The image was cut off, but I didn't need to see more. They were creating a paper trail, building a case that I was losing my mind. Every interaction would be twisted. Every forget would be magnified. Every moment of frustration would be evidence of mental decline. I thought back to recent months, how Lauren had started asking if I'd taken my medications when I hadn't mentioned any, how she'd begun repeating things I'd just said, then looking concerned when I pointed it out. "You just told me that." "Margaret, are you feeling all right?" The gentle gaslighting designed to make me question myself. 8:45 a.m. now. I sat back, my coffee cold, my mind razor-sharp with fury and purpose. Lauren Davis, or Pierce, or whatever her real name was, thought she'd found the perfect mark. A lonely widow with money, a malleable son, and a grandchild to use as leverage. But she'd made a crucial mistake. She'd shown her hand too early, let her mask slip before all the pieces were in place. The slap hadn't just been her words at dinner. It had been a declaration of war from someone who thought the battle was already won. I picked up my phone and scrolled through my contacts to a name I hadn't called in years. Robert Hale. Private investigator. He'd helped me during a corporate espionage case a decade ago. Discreet, thorough, and completely ruthless when it came to protecting his clients. Before I made the call, I looked once more at the photos of Lauren and Monica, raising their glasses in celebration of their schemes. They thought they were wolves among sheep. They had no idea they'd just walked into a lion's den. The phone rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. "Hale Investigations." "Robert," I said, my voice steady as steel. "It's Margaret Lewis. I need your help, and I need you to be very, very quiet about it." The morning sun had barely cleared the horizon when my doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Mrs. Harlow from next door, her silver hair perfectly coiffed despite the early hour. She held a plate of what looked like her famous blueberry scones, her usual excuse for sharing neighborhood gossip. "Margaret, dear," she said as I opened the door, her sharp blue eyes scanning my face with concern. "I hope I'm not disturbing you, but I simply had to come by. After what I saw yesterday evening, I couldn't sleep a wink." I invited her in, my pulse quickening. "What did you see? Dorothy?" She settled into my kitchen chair, accepting the coffee I offered with practiced grace. Dorothy Harlow was 75, a retired federal judge who missed nothing that happened on our street. If Lauren had been careless enough to be spotted, Dorothy would have caught it. "Well," she began, lowering her voice conspiratorially, "it was around 6:30 p.m., just after your family arrived for dinner. I was watering my roses. You know how finicky they are in this heat, when I noticed that woman, your daughter-in-law, sitting in her car. Before coming in?" I asked carefully. Dorothy shook her head. "That's just it. She was parked 3 houses down. Not in your driveway, on her phone, talking very animatedly. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but sound carries in the evening. And she had her window down." I leaned forward, keeping my expression neutral. "Did you happen to hear any of the conversation?" "Margaret, you know I don't eavesdrop," Dorothy said with a sniff, then smiled slyly. "But when someone is practically shouting in front of my garden, one can hardly help overhearing." She paused for effect, stirring her coffee. She kept saying, "The old woman is getting suspicious," and something about accelerating the timeline. My blood chilled, but I maintained my composure. "Old woman? Oh, it gets worse. Dear, she mentioned someone named Monica several times. Said something like, 'Monica, we need to move to phase 2 before she figures it out.' And then, and this is what really concerned me, she said, 'The girl trusts me completely. She'll say whatever I tell her to say.' The girl, Sophie." My hands tightened around my coffee mug. Dorothy continued, her expression grave. "The last thing I heard before she drove to your driveway was, 'Just make sure the doctor is ready. We might need those evaluations sooner than planned.' Margaret, I don't want to alarm you, but that sounded very much like someone planning something terrible." When I finished quietly, Dorothy reached across the table and patted my hand. "I've seen many cases in my career where family members tried to manipulate elderly relatives. The patterns are always similar: isolation, gaslighting, building a case for incompetence." She fixed me with her judge's stare. "Is that what's happening here?" I weighed my options quickly. Dorothy Harlow was sharp, discreet, and most importantly, a credible witness if I needed one. "Yes," I admitted. "I believe it is." She nodded grimly. "I thought as much. Your daughter-in-law has that look about her. Too sweet, too perfect. I've seen it in my courtroom more times than I can count." She pulled out her phone. "I took the liberty of recording a video of her in the car. The audio isn't perfect, but you can clearly see her speaking and gesticulating. I also wrote down the exact time and what I heard immediately after, in case you need a contemporaneous record." My eyes stung with unexpected gratitude. "Dorothy, I don't know how to thank you." "Nonsense," she said briskly. "We look out for each other on this street. Besides," her eyes twinkled with a hint of mischief, "I never did like that woman. Remember the block party last year? She spent the entire time asking everyone about their property values and retirement plans. Very gauche." I remembered. At the time, I'd excused it as Lauren trying to make conversation in a neighborhood where she felt out of place. Now I saw it for what it was: reconnaissance. "There's more," Dorothy said, her voice dropping. "This isn't the first time I've seen her parked on our street when you weren't home. About a month ago, I saw her here in the middle of the day. You were at your office, I believe. She had a key. Let herself in. Stayed for about an hour." "An hour?" My mind raced. What could she have been doing? I thought perhaps she was dropping something off, but she came out with a manila folder. Looked quite pleased with herself. Dorothy sipped her coffee thoughtfully. "And 2 weeks ago, I saw her again, this time with another woman. Tall, dark hair, similar features. They sat in the car for 20 minutes, looking at papers and pointing at your house. Monica. It had to be Monica." "Dorothy," I said slowly, "would you be willing to write all of this down? Everything you've seen and heard? Already done, dear." She pulled out a sealed envelope from her purse, typed, dated, and signed. "I may be retired, but I still know how to prepare a proper witness statement." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "And Margaret, if you need me to testify to any of this, you just say the word. That woman might think she's clever, but she's about to learn that this neighborhood protects its own. After Dorothy left, I sat in my kitchen, holding her envelope. The pieces were falling into place faster than I'd anticipated. Lauren wasn't just planning. She was actively executing her scheme. The fact that she'd been in my house alone, going through my papers, suggested she was looking for financial documents, medical records, anything she could use to build her case. I thought about Sophie, trusting her mother, being groomed to say whatever Lauren needed her to say. The fury that had been simmering since last night threatened to boil over. But fury without focus was useless. I needed to be smart, strategic. My phone buzzed. A text from Robert Hale. Initial background check complete. We need to meet. This is bigger than you think. I looked out my window at the peaceful street where I'd lived for 20 years. Somewhere out there. Lauren was probably congratulating herself on how well her plan was progressing. She had no idea that the old woman she'd dismissed had just gained a powerful ally in Dorothy Harlow, and that Robert Hale was about to uncover every skeleton in her closet. The game had changed. Lauren thought she was playing chess, carefully moving her pieces into position, but she'd failed to notice that the board itself belonged to me, and I was about to flip it entirely. Robert Hale hadn't changed much in 10 years, still the same weathered face, sharp gray eyes, and ramrod-straight posture that spoke of his military background. We met at a discreet office building downtown, far from any place Lauren might frequent. He slid a thick folder across the conference table, his expression grim. Margaret, your daughter-in-law isn't Lauren Davis. She's Gwen Marie Pierce, and she's been running this con for over a decade. I opened the folder, my hand steady despite the rage building in my chest. The first page showed a mugshot, unmistakably Lauren, but younger, harder looking. Arrested in Nevada. Fraud charges, case dismissed on a technicality. The victim, Eleanor Sutton, died before trial. Died? Heart attack, supposedly brought on by stress. She was 82. Robert's jaw tightened. But here's where it gets interesting. Eleanor had recently changed her will, leaving everything to her devoted caregiver, Gwen Pierce. The family contested it, but without Eleanor's testimony... I flipped through more pages. 3 other elderly victims, all in different states. Harold Brennan in Florida, whom I'd found earlier. Marcus Webb in Arizona. Lost his retirement savings to a financial advisor named G. Pierce. Patricia Holbrook in Colorado. Signed over power of attorney to a family friend named Lauren Pierce before suffering a suspicious fall. The pattern is always the same, Robert continued. She targets wealthy, elderly people, either directly or through their families, gains trust, isolates them, then either drains their accounts or positions herself to inherit. She's smart, never stays in one place too long, changes her approach just enough to avoid detection. And Monica Ellen Pierce, the younger sister, she's the technical one, forges documents, creates fake medical records, handles the digital trail. Together, they're a well-oiled machine. He pulled out another photo. Recognize this woman? It was the doctor from the coffee shop photo. Doctor. Sarah Chen. Except she's not a real doctor. She's Monica's girlfriend, Sarah Morrison. She's played a nurse, a therapist, even a financial advisor, depending on what the con requires. My mind raced. 3 women, working together, perfecting their craft over years. And now they had their sights set on me and my family. There's more, Robert said quietly. Your son Daniel. I did some checking. He's been prescribed anti-anxiety medication for the past 2 years. The prescribing doctor, a doctor, Patricia Kemp, who doesn't exist. The office address is a mail drop. Someone's been drugging your son. Margaret, keeping him compliant, foggy. The room spun for a moment. I gripped the table edge. She's been medicating him? Benzodiazepines, highly addictive, affects memory and judgment. It would explain his passivity, his inability to stand up to her. Robert's voice was gentle but firm. This isn't just about money anymore. This is about saving your son and granddaughter from a dangerous criminal. I studied the photos spread before me. Gwen Pierce at 25, arrested for fraud. At 28, a blurry surveillance photo from a casino where she'd worked as Eleanor Sutton's companion. At 30, a social media photo with Harold Brennan. And now, at 32, sitting at my dinner table, calling me a selfish capitalist. "What about Sophie?" I asked, dreading the answer. No evidence of drugging, but... Robert hesitated. I found something concerning. Lauren, Gwen, has been taking Sophie to a child psychologist, Dr. Amanda Ross, who's legitimate, but known for being easily influenced. The visit started 6 months ago. Sophie's been diagnosed with adjustment disorder and anxiety related to family dynamics. Building a paper trail, I said flatly, making Sophie seem troubled, unreliable as a witness. Exactly. If Sophie says Grandma is fine, it's because she's in denial. If Sophie says something's wrong with her mother, it's the anxiety talking. Robert closed the folder. Margaret, these women are dangerous. Patricia Holbrook is in a nursing home now, convinced she's losing her mind. Marcus Webb committed suicide after losing everything. Eleanor Sutton died alone, estranged from her family. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city skyline. 3 lives destroyed, possibly more we didn't know about, and now they'd come for mine. Can we go to the police? I asked. With what we have now, it's mostly circumstantial. We need concrete evidence of a crime in progress. Robert joined me at the window. But I have an idea. It's risky, but it could work. Tell me. We set a trap. You play into their hands, act confused, forgetful, vulnerable. Let them think their plan is working. Meanwhile, we document everything. I can set up hidden cameras, recording devices. When they make their move, we'll have them. I thought of Daniel, dulled by medications he didn't know he was taking. Of Sophie, being manipulated by a woman she called Mom. Of all the victims who'd come before us, there's something else, Robert said. I tracked down Patricia Holbrook's daughter. She said something interesting. Right before Patricia signed over power of attorney, Gwen Pierce made a mistake. She got cocky, told Patricia, "You should be grateful. Most people your age don't get such devoted care. Some aren't so lucky. Accidents happen. Hearts give out. At least you'll be safe with me." A chill ran down my spine. The threat was clear. Cooperate or face the consequences. Eleanor Sutton's heart attack took on a sinister new meaning. "Do it," I said firmly. "Set up whatever you need, but Robert, I need to get my son away from her first. If she realizes we're onto her." Already on it. I have a colleague who specializes in deprogramming. Once we can prove the false prescriptions, we can get Daniel into treatment, but we have to be careful. If Gwen suspects anything, she might accelerate her timeline or worse. I turn from the window, my resolve hardening. Then we give her exactly what she wants, a confused old woman, ripe for the picking. I smiled grimly. She wants to play predator? Let her. She has no idea she's about to become the prey. Robert nodded approvingly. The Gwen Pierces of the world always make the same mistake. They assume their marks are weak because they're old or trusting. They never expect them to fight back with intelligence and resources. As I left the meeting, my phone buzzed. A text from Lauren. "Hi, Margaret. I wanted to apologize for last night. Could we have lunch tomorrow, just the 2 of us? I have something important to discuss about Sophie's future." I typed back, "Of course. Dear, I've been feeling so scattered lately. Would love to clear the air. Let the hunt begin." The next morning, Robert's team worked with surgical precision. By 10 a.m., my house was wired with state-of-the-art surveillance equipment. Cameras no bigger than pinheads, audio recorders that could pick up whispers from across a room. Every angle covered, every word would be captured. Remember. Robert coached me as he handed me a special pen. "This records everything. Keep it visible on the table, in your pocket, wherever you are. The backup systems will catch anything it misses." I dressed carefully for lunch with Lauren, choosing a cardigan that was slightly misbuttoned, applying lipstick just a bit off-center, small details that suggested a mind beginning to fray. In the mirror. I practiced the vacant smile I'd seen on Patricia Holbrook's face in her photos, The restaurant Lauren had chosen was expensive, intimate, the kind of place where conversations stayed private. She was already there when I arrived, looking every inch the concerned daughter-in-law in a modest dress that probably cost more than she'd claimed to make in a month. "Margaret," she rose to kiss my cheek, her perfume cloying. "You look tired. Are you sleeping well?" I let my hand shake slightly as I reached for my water glass. "Oh, the house makes such strange noises at night. Sometimes I wonder if someone's there, but then I check and—" I trailed off, blinking rapidly. Lauren's eyes lit up with predatory interest. "That must be frightening. Have you mentioned this to anyone? Your doctor, perhaps?" "Doctor? Did I see the doctor recently?" I frowned, playing confused. I can't seem to remember appointments like I used to. She reached across the table, patting my hand with false sympathy. "That's why I wanted to talk to you. Daniel and I are worried. These memory lapses, the paranoia about intruders. We think it might be time to consider some help." "Help?" I let my voice quaver. "Someone to stay with you. Make sure you're taking medications, eating properly." She pulled out a brochure. "This is a wonderful assisted living facility. Very exclusive, excellent care." I studied the brochure with trembling hands. Sunset Meadows, which I knew from Robert's research was where 2 of Gwen's previous victims had ended up, their assets mysteriously depleted within months. But my house, I protested weakly. "Oh, we take care of everything. Daniel could manage the sale. Ensure you get the best price. The proceeds would cover your care for years." Her smile was shark-like. "And Sophie could visit whenever she wants. Wouldn't that be nice?" I nodded slowly, then suddenly gripped her wrist. "Lauren, sometimes I feel like you don't really like me, like you're planning something." I made my eyes wide, fearful. "That's crazy, isn't it? You wouldn't hurt me?" For just a moment, her mask slipped. I saw contempt flash across her features before the concerned expression returned. "Of course not. Margaret, these paranoid thoughts are exactly why we're worried." "You're imagining threats that don't exist. I found papers," I whispered urgently. "In my desk, about my will, my accounts. Someone had moved them." "Was it you?" She leaned forward. All solicitude. "I did stop by last week to drop off Sophie's jacket. Maybe I bumped the desk. Margaret, this confusion, this suspicion, it's not like you. We need to get you help before something terrible happens." "Terrible?" I echoed. "Well, you're alone in that big house. What if you fall? What if you forget to turn off the stove? What if you—" She paused delicately. "Make a mistake with medications. At your age, these things can be fatal." There it was, the threat wrapped in concern. I let my face crumple. "I'm scared, Lauren. What if I'm really losing my mind? That's why we're here for you." She signaled the waiter. "I took the liberty of making an appointment for you. Doctor. Sarah Kellerman comes highly recommended for geriatric evaluations." Sarah Kellerman, another alias for Monica's girlfriend. They were moving fast. "When?" I asked meekly. "Thursday at 2 p.m. Daniel will drive you." She smiled. "Don't worry about anything. We'll take care of all the paperwork, all the decisions. You just need to sign a few things giving Daniel temporary power of attorney, just until we sort out what's happening with your health." I pretended to consider this, then brightened artificially. "You know what? You're right. I should probably update my will, too. Make sure Sophie's protected if something happens to me." Lauren's eyes glittered. "What a wonderful idea. I know an excellent lawyer who specializes in elder law. Very discreet, very understanding of complex family situations." The trap was working perfectly. She thought I was crumbling, ready to hand over control. What she didn't know was that every word was being recorded, that Robert's investigator was photographing us through the restaurant window, that the confused old woman act was just that, an act. "Lauren," I said suddenly, gripping her hand, "promise me something. If I get worse, you'll take care of Sophie? And Daniel?" "Of course," she cooed. "Family takes care of family." "Good, because I've been thinking about setting up a trust, maybe putting you as co-trustee with Daniel. You're so good with finances, and if something happens to me—" I let the sentence dangle. I could practically see dollar signs in her eyes. "Margaret, that's so thoughtful. Yes, I think that would be wise. Very wise." As we left the restaurant, she insisted on walking me to my car. "Are you sure you should be driving? You seem so fragile today." "I'll be fine," I assured her, fumbling with my keys for effect. She watched me drive away, probably already texting Monica about their success. The confused old woman was playing right into their hands, ready to sign away everything. Back home, Robert was waiting. "Outstanding performance," and he said, reviewing the recordings. "She's getting reckless, pushing too hard, the appointment with the fake doctor, the immediate push for power of attorney. She's showing her hand." "Thursday," I said firmly. "We make our move Thursday. I want Daniel there to see who his wife really is." Robert nodded. "I'll have everything ready. Local police, federal investigators. Gwen Pierce's con game ends this week." I looked around my home. Soon to be a battleground. Lauren thought she was reeling in her biggest score yet. She had no idea she was swimming straight into a net that would destroy everything she'd built on the suffering of others. The prey had become the predator, and I was ready to strike. Thursday arrived with gray skies that matched the gravity of what was about to unfold. I'd spent the previous day with Robert finalizing every detail. Daniel had been contacted by Robert's colleague, a specialist who'd shown him proof of the fake prescriptions. The shock had been brutal, but it had also awakened the son I remembered, the one who'd fight for his family. At 1:45 p.m., I sat in my living room, hands folded in my lap, wearing the same slightly disheveled appearance I'd cultivated at lunch. The coffee table held the documents Lauren had sent over: power of attorney forms, trust papers, even a pre-signed real estate listing agreement for my house, all waiting for my shaky signature. The doorbell rang precisely at 2 p.m. I opened it to find Lauren, Daniel, and a woman I recognized from photos as Sarah Morrison, today playing doctor. Sarah Kellerman, behind them, barely visible, was another figure. Monica Pierce had come to witness her sister's triumph. "Margaret," Lauren cooed, guiding me back to the living room. "This is Dr. Kellerman. She's here to help." Sarah Morrison was good. Professional blazer, fake glasses, a leather portfolio that probably contained bogus medical credentials. She even had a stethoscope draped around her neck for effect. "Mrs. Lewis," she said warmly, "I understand you've been experiencing some confusion lately. Memory issues, paranoia?" I let my eyes dart nervously between them. Yes. Lauren says I've been forgetting things, but I don't remember forgetting." Daniel stood by the window, his face a mask, but I caught his slight nod. He was ready. More importantly, he was clear-headed for the first time in 2 years, the drugs flushed from his system. "That's perfectly normal," the fake doctor assured me. "Why don't we sit down and go through some simple questions?" As we settled onto the couches, Monica slipped in, closing the door behind her. "Sorry I'm late," she said. "Traffic was horrible." Lauren barely concealed her irritation. "Margaret, this is my friend Monica. She's here for moral support." "Have we met?" I asked, peering at Monica with calculated confusion. "You look familiar." "I don't think so," Monica said smoothly, but I caught the sharp glance between the sisters. "Now then," the fake doctor began, pulling out official-looking forms. "Based on Lauren's observations and what I'm seeing today, I'm concerned about your cognitive state. I think immediate intervention is necessary." "What kind of intervention?" I asked, voice trembling. "Temporary conservatorship," she said gently. "Just until we can get you properly evaluated and treated, your son would handle your affairs, ensure your bills are paid, your medications managed. With Lauren's help, of course," Lauren added quickly. "As co-conservator, Daniel's still recovering from his own stress issues." I turned to my son. "Daniel, do you think I'm losing my mind?" For a moment, he just stared at his wife. Then, in a voice I hadn't heard in 2 years, clear and strong, "No, Mom, I think you're the sanest person in this room." Lauren's face went white. "Danny, what are you—" "Gwen," he said quietly. "Her name is Gwen Pierce. Mom, Not Lauren Davis. And this isn't Dr. Kellerman. It's Monica's girlfriend, Sarah Morrison. They're con artists. The room exploded into motion. Monica lunged for the documents on the table while Lauren grabbed my arm. "Sign them!" she hissed. All pretense gone. "Sign them now, you old bitch." "I don't think so," I said, my voice suddenly steady, clear, completely lucid. "But I do have a question for you. Gwen, how exactly did Eleanor Sutton die? Heart attack, the report said, but you were alone with her, weren't you?" Gwen's grip tightened painfully. "You don't know what you're talking about. You're confused, paranoid. Like Patricia Holbrook? Like Marcus Webb?" I pulled my arm free. "Oh yes, I know all about them. Just like I know about the fake prescriptions you've been feeding my son. Tell me, what's the dosage for keeping someone compliant but functional?" Monica had stopped reaching for the papers, her face pale. "Gwen, we need to go. Now." "Not yet," Gwen snarled. "She's going to sign these papers, aren't you? Margaret, because accidents happen to stubborn old women. They fall downstairs, mix up their medications, have sudden heart problems." "Is that a threat?" I asked calmly. "It's a promise." She spat. "You can make this easy or hard. Either way, I'm getting what I came for. What I've worked 5 years for. What I deserve for putting up with your pathetic family." Sarah Morrison was edging toward the door. "I didn't sign up for this. You said it would be simple." "Shut up," Monica snapped. Then, to her sister, "She knows too much. We need to handle this differently." "You mean like you handled Eleanor Sutton?" I stood, facing them with no trace of the confused old woman I'd been playing. "Did she refuse to sign too? Is that why she had to die?" Gwen's face contorted with rage. "Eleanor was going to ruin everything, just like you. But we know how to deal with problems." She pulled something from her purse. A syringe. Amazing what the right drugs can do. Heart attack, stroke, accidental overdose. So many options for elderly women living alone. "Except I'm not alone," I said. That's when the doors opened. Not just the front door. The study door, the kitchen door, even the closet door. Police officers flooded in, weapons drawn, badges gleaming, FBI agents in tactical gear. And Robert Hale, holding up his phone with every word they'd spoken recorded in crystal clarity. "Gwen Pierce, Monica Pierce, Sarah Morrison," the lead FBI agent announced. "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, elder abuse, attempted murder, and in connection with the death of Eleanor Sutton." Gwen lunged at me with the syringe, but Daniel caught her wrist, twisting until she dropped it. For the first time in 2 years, I saw my son, truly saw him, clear-eyed, strong, protecting his mother. "You destroyed everything," Gwen screamed as they cuffed her. 5 years of my life wasted on you people." "No," I said quietly. "You destroyed yourself. Greed always does." As they led the 3 women out, Monica was sobbing. Sarah was silent, but Gwen kept screaming threats and profanities. The neighbors had gathered outside, Dorothy Harlow among them, watching justice finally catch up with the predators. Daniel collapsed onto the couch, shaking. "Mom, I'm so sorry. The things she made me say, made me do—" "That wasn't you," I said firmly, sitting beside him. "That was the drugs, the manipulation. You're back now. That's what matters." "Where's Sophie?" he asked suddenly. "Is she—" "Safe at school," Robert assured him. "There's a counselor with her. Someone real this time. She'll help Sophie understand what happened." I looked around my living room, at the scattered papers that would have stolen everything, at the syringe that might have ended my life. They'd thought I was prey. They'd thought wrong. The courtroom was packed 6 months later. I sat in the front row with Daniel and Sophie, watching as Gwen Pierce, her real name finally exposed, stood to hear her sentence. The orange jumpsuit was a far cry from her designer dresses, and without her carefully crafted mask, she looked like what she truly was, a common criminal who'd preyed on the vulnerable. "Gwen Marie Pierce," the judge intoned, "you have been found guilty of conspiracy to commit murder in the 1st degree. 15 counts of elder fraud, identity theft, and attempted murder. The jury has heard evidence of your systematic targeting of elderly victims across 5 states, resulting in 1 death and immeasurable suffering." I squeezed Sophie's hand as the judge continued. My granddaughter had been through therapy, learning to process the betrayal of someone she'd called mom. But children are resilient, and with Daniel's love and my support, she was healing. For the murder of Eleanor Sutton, I sentence you to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the remaining charges, sentences to run concurrently. Gwen turned to stare at me as they led her away. The hatred in her eyes was pure poison, but it couldn't touch me anymore. She'd gambled everything on greed and lost it all. Monica Pierce received 25 years, eligible for parole in 15. She'd sobbed through her entire trial, claiming Gwen had manipulated her. Perhaps there was some truth to that, but she'd made her choices. Sarah Morrison, the fake doctor, got 10 years and would never practice any form of healthcare again. Not that she ever legitimately had. Outside the courthouse, reporters clamored for statements. I'd become something of a reluctant celebrity, the grandmother who'd outwitted a serial con artist. But I pushed past them, focused on my family. Ice cream? I suggested to Sophie, who managed a small smile. Can we get the one with the waffle cones? She asked. Anything you want, sweetheart. As we walked to my car, Daniel stopped me. Mom, I need to say this again. I'm so sorry. When I think about what almost happened, what I almost let happen. Stop, I said firmly. You were drugged, manipulated by a professional predator. The fact that you broke free when it mattered most, that's what counts. He nodded, eyes glistening. The divorce will be final next month. I'm thinking. Maybe Sophie and I could move closer to you? Start fresh? I'd like that, I said, meaning it. 3 tables away at the ice cream shop, Dorothy Harlow sat with her book club, all eager for details about the trial. She gave me a knowing nod, the neighbor who'd seen the truth when it mattered. Grandma, Sophie said suddenly, chocolate ice cream dotting her nose, I'm glad you're so smart and brave. You know what made me brave? I asked her. Loving you and your dad. When someone threatens the people you love, you find strength you didn't know you had. Robert Hale had sent me a final report last week. They'd linked Gwen and Monica to 12 victims across the country. 3 had died under suspicious circumstances. 8 had lost their life savings. 1, Patricia Holbrook, was slowly recovering in a facility, her daughter by her side, finally free from the fog of gaslighting and manipulation. My phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. The civil suits against Gwen's assets, what little she had left, would provide some compensation to her victims. It wouldn't restore what they'd lost, but it was justice of a sort, that evening, back in my home that had nearly become a crime scene. I stood at the window where I'd first realized the danger we were in. The street was peaceful, ordinary. You'd never know that a predator had stalked here, patient and ruthless, for 5 long years. Daniel and Sophie were in the kitchen, making dinner together, a simple scene that had almost been stolen from us. Their laughter drifted through the house, genuine and healing. I thought about Gwen in her cell, Monica in hers, their elaborate scheme reduced to prison numbers and regrets. They'd thought age made me weak, that wealth made me a target, that family love made me blind. They'd thought wrong. They'd believed I was just another bitter old capitalist, as Gwen had sneered that night at dinner. What they'd failed to understand was that I hadn't built my success by being naive or trusting. I'd survived in the business world by reading people, by recognizing threats, by knowing when to play defense and when to strike. In the end, their greatest weapon, my love for my family, had become their downfall. Because that love hadn't made me weak. It had made me dangerous. It had made me willing to do whatever it took to protect the people I cherished. I smiled, watching my son help my granddaughter set the table. They moved carefully around each other, still healing, still learning to trust again. But they were here. They were safe. They were free. Gwen had promised that accidents happen to stubborn old women. She'd been half right. Accidents do happen. Hers was underestimating me. They thought I was weak. They were wrong. And the price for that mistake? Their freedom? Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where in the world you're tuning in from. Drop a comment below and let's connect. If this story of family, betrayal, and ultimate justice resonated with you, please consider subscribing to the channel for more gripping tales. Share your thoughts on Margaret's journey, and remember, sometimes the strongest among us are those society overlooks. What would you have done in her situation? Let me know in the comments.